It began like these things always do, too subtle to set off alarms. A knock at the door. 3 firm beats. Not panicked, not frantic. Just deliberate. Harper Quinn had just settled in her couch with a cup of chamomile, hoping to finally breathe after another chaotic day. The house was wrapped in its sacred bedtime silence, the white noise machine humming faintly from the hallway, a soft glow from the night lights, the comforting stillness that always followed her daughter Zoe's evening routine. Then a second knock. Not louder, just more persistent. Harper's stomach knotted. She placed the cup down carefully and walked to the door. The first thing she saw was the badge. The officer looked young, mid-30s maybe. His stance was practiced, confident in that half-trained way that screamed, "I've got authority, and I'm ready to use it." His hand hovered near his holster, not threatening, not relaxed, just ready. Behind him stood someone Harper recognized instantly. Valerie Cummings, the president of the Maple Hollow HOA and self-appointed monarch of the cul-de-sac. Her arms were folded, lips pursed into a smug line of victory. Then Harper saw her. Zoe, barefoot on the porch. Her 8-year-old daughter. Her hair was mussed from the breeze, and her wide eyes looked like they'd seen lightning. Her fists were clenched tightly against her thighs, her whole frame rigid. "Zoe, honey, what's going on?" Harper asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The officer stepped forward. "Ma'am, we received a report of suspected child neglect. The caller said the child refuses to speak. We need to ask you a few questions." Harper blinked. Surely, she'd misheard. Then the words slammed into place. Refuses to speak. She let out a dry, bitter laugh. "She's autistic. She's nonverbal. That's not neglect. That's a diagnosis." Valerie stepped in now, bypassing the officer entirely. "We don't have that information on file," she said crisply. "And when a child refuses to communicate, it becomes a safety concern for the neighborhood. We don't know what's going on in her head." Harper stared at her. There were a dozen things she could have said. Legal terms, diagnostic language, letters from doctors. But none of that mattered right now. Because this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was fear wrapped in policy. Prejudice masquerading as procedure. "Come here, sweetheart," she whispered. Zoe didn't speak, but she moved, slow, confused, wordless. Her body told a story. She needed safety. Harper wrapped her arms around her daughter, shielding her. "I want your badge number," she said to the officer, her voice steel. In the name of whoever approved this call. The officer glanced toward Valerie, uncertain. What Harper felt wasn't panic. It wasn't fear. It was rage. Cold. Controlled. Absolute. Part 2 taken. The officer cleared his throat. "Ma'am, I'm gonna need you to step aside. The child needs to come with me while we file a report." "She hasn't committed a crime," Harper snapped. "She's not under arrest. This is temporary. We're not arresting anyone." But that was a lie. Because when you rip a child from her mother's arms, when she starts shaking, pressing her fists against her head, screaming a sound only her parent can interpret, something sacred has already been taken. Harper didn't resist. Not yet. Zoe was already overloaded. A meltdown here could spiral out of control. So with shaking hands and eyes burning, she let go. The officer led Zoe to the squad car, gently but with practiced attachment. Harper stood on the porch, frozen, watching the taillights disappear down the street. No charges. No explanation. Just gone. The next few hours were a blur. She called 911, then was rerouted to Child Protective Services. CPS confirmed Zoe had been taken to a local ER for a wellness evaluation. Harper drove like a ghost behind the wheel, powered only by adrenaline. At the ER, she found Zoe sitting alone in an observation room, watched by a nurse behind a plexiglass window. Her daughter's cheeks were wet, her eyes red, her mouth silent. Harper didn't speak. She just entered, held her, rocked her. "You're safe now, baby. I've got you." It took 2 hours, 3 signatures, and a half-hearted apology to be discharged. When they got home, it was nearly 9 p.m. In the mailbox was a letter from the HOA. No return address. Inside, notice of noncompliance. Zoe was to appear before the HOA board for a behavioral assessment, next Tuesday. Failure to comply would lead to fines or possible removal. Harper sat down on the kitchen floor in the dark, letter trembling in her lap. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was war. There are different kinds of silence. Some are gentle, like the hush after a bedtime story or the calm that settles over a sleeping house. But some silences, they cling. They rot. They haunt. They are voids where sound should live. That was the silence Harper woke up to every day after that night. Zoe stopped going outside. She no longer traced her fingers along the wooden fence. No more sitting beneath the backyard oak tree, sketching invisible spirals in the dirt. No more staring out the window to watch the wind play with the leaves. She just stopped. She would sit on the couch for hours, slowly rocking back and forth, forward, backward, forward again. The same rhythm from years ago. A rhythm Harper prayed they had left behind for good. Then came the pillow. One afternoon, Harper returned from folding laundry and found Zoe pressing her forehead against a throw pillow, tapping it slowly. Not hard, not violent, just rhythmic, persistent. A flare from a nervous system no longer at peace. Harper froze. Then she moved gently to Zoe's side, took the pillow away, and held her daughter's hand. Zoe didn't resist. She just withdrew, like someone dimming a light from inside. The next day, Harper was on the phone nonstop. The therapist, the speech pathologist, the neurologist. Each one tried to sound calm, reassuring. She's regressing, Harper said flatly. She's shutting down. They asked for notes, timelines, triggers. Harper gave them everything. Still, their voices wavered, just slightly, uncertainty peeking through decades of clinical training. Because this wasn't a typical setback. This was trauma. It wasn't theoretical. It wasn't developmental. It was now. The breaking point. 3 nights later, Harper prepared Zoe's favorite dinner. Macaroni and cheese, apple slices, no sauces touching, everything plated just right. Zoe stared at the plate, didn't blink, then quietly got up and walked away. Harper sat alone at the table, fork in hand, food cooling in the silence. She didn't cry in front of Zoe, but in the shower, she collapsed against the tile, sobs swallowed by the rushing water. Not because she hadn't braced for setbacks. She was a mother, a veteran of many storms. But this felt different. This felt like betrayal. Not Zoe's, the system's. Zoe had always trusted her, through surgeries, hospital visits, school meetings, grocery aisle meltdowns. In every moment of confusion or fear, she had reached for Harper. Now even that anchor was drifting. That night, Zoe touched Harper's hand briefly, gently. Not for comfort, but as if to ask the unspoken question, "Why didn't you stop them, Mommy?" And Harper had no answer, only a promise. That next time, no one would lay a hand on her daughter again. The second letter. It came on a Thursday. A manila envelope slid quietly through the mail slot. No return address. Just like the last one. Harper didn't need to open it to know. The weight of the paper. The scent of toner. The HOA's passive-aggressive musk practically radiating through the flap. She opened it anyway. Notice of violation. Section 3.2 of the Maple Hollow Residency Agreement. Due to recent behavioral disturbances, your household may be subject to a removal hearing. The board reserves the right to evaluate the residency status of any individuals deemed a potential threat to community standards. No names, no specifics, no humanity, just paper, cold and surgical. Harper stood in the kitchen. The letter trembled in her hand. The dishwasher hummed behind her. The fridge clicked and went quiet. She didn't cry. She didn't blink. Something inside her had snapped, not in grief, but into place. This wasn't sadness anymore. This was strategy. The shift. They had come after her child. Now she was going to come for them. She was a civil rights attorney, and a damn good one. 12 years in courtrooms. Dozens of cases where the system failed vulnerable children. And now it was personal. She pulled out a yellow legal pad, a black pen, and a dusty binder from law school she hadn't opened in years. The grief could wait. The rage had a job to do. Step 1. Documentation. Medical records. psychological assessments, neurologist reports, speech therapy notes, all dated, notarized, endorsed by professionals ready to testify under oath. Harper sorted them into folders, color-coded, labeled, diagnosis, progress, regression, timeline. Step 2, communications. Every HOA letter, every notice, every snide email signed, the board. She highlighted phrases: unfit, disruption, non compliant, unresponsive child. It wasn't just harassment. It was discrimination, and it was actionable. Step 3, surveillance. Howard Pennington, her neighbor 2 doors down, retired Army vet, owned a ring cam that faced part of her driveway. She visited under the pretense of borrowing a power drill. She left with a USB drive. That night, she loaded the video on her laptop. The footage was grainy, but the audio? Crystal. Valerie Cummings stood outside Harper's home, speaking to another board member. She just stands there like a freak. Doesn't speak. That ain't normal. What if she snaps? Harper paused the video, and for the first time in weeks, she smiled. Not out of joy, out of certainty, because now it wasn't just her word. It was evidence. Admissible, undeniable, unforgivable.